Good evening, guys and girls. Welcome to episode 11 of the Third and Short Overtime podcast. I'm joined by the regular bunch. It's Mark, JP and Bones. Same, won't change too much of us four. And we're getting really close to the season now. So we've got some great episodes lined up. Well, I hope you think they're great. But I thought this week we all got together and thought it'd be a good idea with the training camp coming to an end that we'd talk about some of the things that have been happening. You know, we picked a few things out ourselves and obviously the main talking points. So I think we should just get on with it, lads, don't you? You know,
yeah. Let's go for it.
I think the first one we want to talk about, I think it's a big one really, with the rookie quarterbacks. You know, coming out of the draft this year. You know, you had Lance, Fields, Lawrence, Wilson, and obviously a few others that are probably maybe not going to see as much action as these four. But I know Mark would love me to come to him first about Trey Lance, but obviously we've got a 49er fan here, so we're gonna go to Jonathan and ask for his thoughts on how Trey Lance is doing in his training camp at the moment. And
yeah, it's been an interesting one. I think my enthusiasm for Trey Lance is similar to Mark's in terms of what I think of him as a player. But I've said on pretty much every pod we've done about the 49ers or about the rookies, I don't think he's going to start this year. And I haven't yet seen anything that says the opposite to that. He's had a very good camp. I think what he is showing is that he's not going to have an adjustment period, particularly to the NFL. He seems to hit the ground running really well. Looking really impressive in practice. But I think what we've seen in the last couple of days, I know you saw a little bit about some issues that he had with the red zone drill yesterday, and just situational football, the kind of things he hasn't had to do at North Dakota State. For instance, doing the 8 seconds to go drill yesterday, he ran the clock out once, and then his second try to a pass inbound short of the end zone, which also ran the clock out. So these are things that, you know, I wouldn't be expecting rookies to get spot on every time, but especially not rookies that have come from sort of the level of competition he has. Like I said, they were blowing teams out. So, but I think there's enough there that as much as he has looked really, really capable, Shanahan's going to be a little bit reticent about sticking him in as a starter. The only other thing, and I think it's worth mentioning, there's been a lot of talk about some situational stuff, using him in certain formations and packages. Kind of almost makes him sound like Colin Kaepernick back in the day, you know, running read options and zone reads and such like. Be interested to see if he does actually go ahead with that. It seems a very un-Shanahan thing to do. He's not really done that in the past, apart from with Robert Griffin, but Griffin was his starter. But yeah, good camp. He's doing really well. He looks like he belongs, and he's putting some pressure on Garoppolo. Hopefully that brings the best out of him. I'm not sure what Garoppolo's best is. I don't know that we've ever really seen it. So yeah, all around pretty good, but I don't think it's shifted anything in terms of the competition.
Yeah, good. I'm going to come to you next, Mark. Are you in agreement with John? Do you think we'll see him a lot sooner than you think?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think that he's going to start week one. I think we're going to see Garoppolo as the starter at the 49ers. But I do think that Garoppolo is going to be on a short leash. I think that Shanahan and the 49ers coaching team have probably earmarked a period when Trey Lance will come in. I think the thing is, though, right, is what Trey Lance gives to a team is he gives that ability with his legs. Now, he is a very accurate quarterback. I mean, let's not just title him as a big-bodied runner like Josh Allen, who's inaccurate. You know, he was accurate coming out of college, Trey Lance. So we know he can throw the ball. We know he can protect the ball. He only threw one turnover, one interception throughout his college career. This isn't a guy who scattershot. This is a guy who can put the ball on the numbers, who can move the ball in a pro-style offense, who can set an offensive line blocking in front of him, you know, and call out blocking packages and offensive line blocking packages. I think it's just a matter of time before he comes in, although I don't feel he will be the week one starter. But to be honest with you, look, this kid can do so much. You know, that Garoppolo can't. He's got a bigger arm. You know, that's a given. You know, he's got a bigger arm than Garoppolo. But he's also got this running factor. And I think when you've got quarterbacks who can make yards with their legs, especially as rookies, I think it puts them in a position to stay in games. You know, we saw this with Jalen Hurts to some extent last year in the Eagles. They were a very poor team, but because of his running ability, they were still in games, which I feel like there's less so of a risk for putting in a quarterback like Trey Lance, for example, than there would be putting in a quarterback like, for example, Mac Jones. I do think that we'll see Lance soon. I think we might see Garoppolo for September, but I wouldn't be surprised if Shanahan's got Lance penciled in for somewhere in October.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I'm on with Mark. I think we will see him just because bye week is, but I think we will see Garoppolo first, and then just depending on how Garoppolo will play, you know, and depending on when we'll see Trey Lance. How about you, Bones? What do you think?
I think there's a lot to be said for Trey Lance getting the job at some point this year. I think Shanahan. I found a quote earlier from Shanahan that said the usual coach thing of as soon as he gives us the best chance to win is when he'll be starting, which is classic coach spiel for we're not telling you. But Jimmy G was still taking first team reps at practice, but there were a few interesting things. Like there were a couple of drives where Lance threw, I think something like 15 out of 16 successful passes, whereas Garoppolo was like 8 for 16. Like Lance has been definitely putting the pressure on at training camp, and I do think that whilst he might not start at the start of the season, there's every chance he could win the job. There's every chance he could impress in the preseason and do enough to earn that job later in the year if Jimmy G doesn't impress. Like I really think he's one of the rawest of the QBs drafted this year, which we all said he was the lowest floor but highest ceiling right now, kind of the lot of them. And yeah, I think it's a surprise to see that he's already pushing Jimmy G for the spot.
You want to add, Mark?
Yeah, I was just looking at the schedule there for the 49ers. It's very team friendly. It would be very rookie friendly, I would say, at the opening portion of the season. I mean, let's also remember, okay, like it is training camp. You know, like when teams invest multiple first round picks and future picks in quarterback positions, it's very unusual that the team's going to come out and say openly that they're struggling. So what you're getting is you're getting all the positive buzz around Trey Lance because that's what you're meant to be getting. That's what the team's wanting the fans to hear. They don't want to see, oh, well, he might have struggled in this section. The film that's being released is the howitzers and the brilliant players and the offensive coordinators and the players are being said, look, yeah, talk up this guy. Talk up this guy because we've got a lot invested in him and we don't want the pressure on him from the fans straight away. I know that John's probably looked at the 49ers schedule, so I'm not going to make his point. I'm going to leave it for him. But at first glance, there does look to be some good areas where you could see Trey Lance coming in, and this might be the week he starts. But I'm going to leave that with John, you know.
Yeah, there's a natural. It made me look the schedule up when you said I'm not sure what the bye week is. So the bye week is obviously week 6. That could be the point because if you look at the schedule, it starts off with 2 road games, Philadelphia and Detroit. Or should I say Detroit and Philadelphia? I got the order wrong. I would expect the 49ers to win both of those games. I'm not saying they will. We've lost on the road to teams we should have beat plenty of times, but I would expect us to win both of those. After that, it gets a little harder. We got the Packers at home, the Seahawks at home, and the Cardinals on the road. There's a feasible chance we could be 2-3 going into the bye, and I think then it's a definite for Garoppolo, not for Garoppolo, for Lance. Sorry. There's a couple of things though. Number one, we haven't seen him play yet. You're exactly right, Mark. It's training camp. They're always going to build people up. We get to see him on Saturday, which I'm Saturday, Sunday morning, which I'm quite looking forward to. I don't know how much he's going to play, but it'll be interesting to see what he's got. But yeah, I think there is a natural point there, but I have a feeling it's going to be the storyline of the season because anytime Garoppolo dips below slightly, above average, which I think is about where he is, then I think the 49ers fans are going to be baying for blood, to be honest. But
I'm pleased you put up that week, John, because that's the week I was thinking as well. I looked at those first 5 games and I thought your bye weeks in week 6, you open with 2 easy games, then you've got 3 tougher ones. I think even if you're 3-2, see if you even win one of them tougher ones, unless you're 4-1 or you're 5-0, I think we're going to see Trey Lance after that bye week. I think if it's 3-2 or 2 or 3, I think we're going to see Trey Lance after that bye week. It seems like the natural point when we'll see him.
Yeah, I think Trey Lance is the big talking point with the rookie quarterbacks at the moment. One thing when I was looking through over these last few weeks, I haven't seen much talk of Trevor Lawrence whatsoever. I know he's like the big main quarterback coming out. Everyone expects him to do well, but obviously it's really good for him. Probably not much pressure on him. But to be honest with you, I think he's a guy that can handle the pressure. So I think that's good for him. Not hearing much anyway, but I think we all know what Trevor Lawrence is about anyway. I don't think we need to hear anything about him in training camp anyway. But one guy where people were on the fence with him coming out of the draft and in the process up was Zach Wilson. Bones, what do you think about Zach Wilson in the training camp so far?
I think he had a rough first day or so. I think there was reports that he didn't have the best first couple of days, but then we all saw the press conference snippets. I went back and watched the whole press conference today to see what else he said. And in all honesty, if nothing else about Wilson, I think he's definitely shown that he's got the temperament to handle the New York media, to handle the press. I think that's something you need if you play in as quarterback for a New York team, and he handled it very well. His points were like well made, and he kept himself cool and calm and collected. He's clearly acknowledged that the preseason will be a learning curve, but I mean, there's no real other options at New York. So Wilson's starting one way or another. It's just how good will his first year be, and I think he's clearly ready to learn, and that is always a good starting point for a rookie quarterback. So we'll see. Yeah,
I must admit, I liked his. I think it was yesterday where he had a comment about this is where he's trying new stuff out. This is where he wants his interceptions. You know, he's taking chances to see what does work. You know, what he can get away with. I did like that little comment he had there. John, anything to add with Zach Wilson?
Yeah, I think he's got probably the easiest situation of the rookie QBs with the possible exception of Lawrence. There's no question he's going to start week one. You know, that probably helps in some respects. There is pressure there, but I think I think it probably helps him be a little bit freer in practice. I really like the quote about I'm going to make mistakes in practice as well. You know, fair enough. And to be honest, that sort of honesty and that sort of attitude is probably going to serve him well with the New York media as well, which is ultimately what's going to make sure whether he succeeds or fails is whether the fans get behind him. I think he's off to a good start. We'll see how he is in the actual game, but he's started well, I would say.
Mark?
Just the one point I want to make. John mentioned it, and Bones has kind of mentioned similar. Bones says there's nothing really else behind him, and John just said they're the New York media. This is what scares me about Zach Wilson. He's in a pressure cooker. He's in an absolute pressure cooker in New York. And the truth of the matter is there's not a veteran there beside him who can take the pressure off when it needs to be done. It's Zach Wilson, JP Morgan, or bust. And I think that this could be a situation where we might see these trade for a vet or, you know, bring on a vet after the first round of camp cuts. I'm thinking maybe Nick Folk or someone like that, you know. There'll be players who are cut when the 53-man rosters come out. Just because if we do get to a situation where, say, Zach Wilson doesn't do so well in the first 3 or 4 games, we know he's going to make mistakes, but that New York market will be on him. And I think what they need a vet who can come in and maybe take a quarter or 2 or 3 quarters over 2 or 3 games just to take that pressure off him if he does throw, for example, 3 interceptions and a half. And let's be honest, it's not out of the realms of possibility with rookies, is it now?
No, I think it's like hit nail on the head there with the media and stuff in New York, you know. And like you said, there's not. Looks like he's got a decent offensive line, possibly, you know, like especially on the left side. But I look at the weapons, and I think it's going to be a lot of teething problems early on with him. You know, even if he had, I suppose, some good receivers. But yeah, it's one to really keep an eye on. One guy I have been keeping an eye on because I absolutely loved him coming out of the draft with Justin Fields. You know, there's been some good clips of him in training camp, you know, making some really good throws. I know we've mentioned that sometimes it doesn't mean everything, but there's also a lot of talk saying that Justin Fields is the number 2. You know, Andy Dalton is my number 1 from Nagy. So, what do you think that is true, Mark, or do you think that it's just all talk?
I think I think Nagy made the most ridiculous comment a month ago before training camp when he said that Andy Dalton was the starter. You know, like anybody who'd watched Justin Fields throughout college. First of all, I still don't know how he was a fourth quarterback taken in this draft. Because for me, he was QB number 2 all the way through the process. And right up the draft day, I still had him above Lance and I still had him above Wilson. I'm not too sure why Nagy was so quick to nail his flag to the Dalton mast. But now he just looks very foolish because out of the tape that you're seeing coming out of training camp, no one can tell me that Dalton presents a better option for the Bears to win now than actually Justin Fields does. You know, like he's making plays all over. He's got a great arm. He's got that run factor. The boy's accurate. He's a leader. He's won before. Honestly, I had him as 1B to Trevor Lawrence's 1A. And I would just start him day one. He would just get the jersey and I would just start him day one. Because I just don't have faith in Andy Dalton. And it's not that Andy Dalton's a bad quarterback. It's just we know what Andy Dalton is. He's an 18 for 25 kind of quarterback. 240 yards with maybe 2 touchdowns and an interception a game. That's what Andy Dalton is. You know, like, and we know that. We know his stat line's going to be there or thereabout pretty much week in or week out. Justin Fields is a whole different gravy. He'll light it up with his legs as much as he will with the arm. He'll take chances. He'll make that offense better. And I would just start on day one, me, Jordan.
Yeah, well, it was a strange comment from Nagy. I don't think he thought he was trying to protect him or what with that comment. And I'm not sure. You know, only Nagy knows what he meant by that. But what about you, John? Have you got anything to add on Fields?
Yeah, I mean, I'm largely going to agree with what's already been said, but I think there is another point here. Like, first of all, like Mark says, why wouldn't you start him? If you're the Bears, what have you got to lose? You're not going to be a playoff team with Andy Dalton. So what have you got to lose? You've literally got nothing to lose. You know, you might as well put him in now if you think he's ready and let him go. Because even if Andy Dalton's good for a year, it doesn't help you down the line. The guy needs game experience. I think the other thing. And I don't understand this comment either. I don't know why he said that, because thinking from his point of view, he's probably on the hot seat going into the season. I mean, I think we're going to do an episode soon on coaches on the hot seat, but I think he's certainly one of them. Why on earth would you not put in a rookie quarterback? It gives you a little bit of scope to say, look, I'm developing this guy. We won, you know, you might win 7-8 games. You might not make the playoffs, but if you would, look, we're progressing with this guy. Give me another year. If he sticks with Dalton, he could be out of a job by the bye week. That I just don't understand why he would be thinking like that. I suppose it's a typical NFL coach thing. It's quite conservative, but I don't get it. If I was him, I would be putting the rookie in and saying to hell with it.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with both. Well, I might be a little bit biased. I'm a massive Justin Fields fan, but I'd be starting him day one. I love what he can do. Like Mark says, he can do stuff with his legs and get himself out of danger. But this guy's got a really good throw in him as well. I think people underestimate how good he is of a thrower, you know, on the run and stuff as well. So yeah, I'd start him day one. I'm with you, but we'll see what happens. So that's the top 4 quarterbacks. Is Bones? Did you want to pick on anyone else that?
I just wanted to. I know we were going to briefly talk about the quarterbacks tonight, so I wanted to bring up that Mac Jones reportedly doing very well at training. I know we've said sometimes at training camp they'll say everyone's doing well, but Cam had a few days out with a hand injury. Jones did pretty well in first team reps. I know Cam's probably going to start. He's going to do better in the second year in this Patriots offense. It's a confusing scheme at times, but yeah, Jones is really doing well, and I wouldn't discount him starting this season. If Cam has another rough year, I think at some point he could end up as the New England starter. The only other one I wanted to touch on, and we're going to mention it later because of Kirk Cousins, is, I would keep an eye on Kellen Mond this year as well, potentially.
How about you, John?
Yeah, I was going to say Kellen Mond. I was pretty high on him in the draft. I think he's a bit boomer bust, but he's not much different to Kirk Cousins in that respect. And, I was going to say, assuming he gets vaccinated, but I don't think he is either. So that could be an issue. A couple of other guys to mention. One other guy to mention for me is Mills at the Texans. Everybody was kind of scratching their heads when they drafted him. I guess we still are to a certain extent. limited draft capital, and they picked a quarterback when they got Deshaun Watson, and I think it's Tyrod Taylor on the roster as well. But with Watson basically doing nothing in camp, and Taylor is he's an okay NFL player. There's not really much else to say about that. I could see him getting some run towards the back end of the year, or possibly even early in the year. I don't know what point the Texans will write the season off and maybe just decide to, decide to go with the young guy. I don't know, but I could see him getting some run this year. I think he's a talent as well. He comes from a pro style offense. I think he'll do all right in the NFL, but I don't know that he'll be a top 10 quarterback. But I think he'll do all right. I think he'll be a serviceable player.
You know who I want to bring up? Sam Ehlinger. Sam Ehlinger, was drafted by the Colts out of Texas. I think if anybody watched the Longhorns, he was a bit meh. Like he was quite. He was a senior. He'd been there a long time. He played a lot of games for the Longhorns in college. But yeah, he's already getting first team reps now with Indianapolis, and I don't think anybody who watched him would have thought he would have been a serious candidate for an NFL starter as a rookie. But obviously, Wentz has went down injured. Jacob Eason, who was drafted last year out of Washington, used to play for Georgia, big arm. He was always going to be prone to turning the ball over, and apparently they've not liked 100% what they've seen in training camp of him. And Ehlinger's already getting first team reps. So, there's a shock name for you, who might be starting earlier than we think. I don't think you'll be anything more than a placeholder. You'll probably just turn around and hand the ball off to the running backs 25 to 30 times a game. But yeah, Ehlinger's one. And also Ian Book. Ian Book at the Saints. I haven't heard much training camp buzz from him. But let's remember the Saints traded up for this guy. They've got Taysom Hill and they've got James Winston on the depth chart ahead of him. But, Ian Book, let's not be surprised if Peyton clearly likes him. He traded up for him. There might be a place in this offense at the turning point of the season for this kid as well. So there's a bit of talk around quarterbacks at the minute.
Yeah, I must admit, I think Kellen Mond's a good call. I didn't mind him coming out of college. There were a few things that needed to get right with him. You could see he could drag the ball up the field. It was just a few decision makings, and it could be one of them where with good coaching it could click with him, and we could see a good quarterback there. But we'll see if he's on the right team for the right coaching. So our next topic is going to be obviously the contracts, the holdouts, the disputes, and I think we'll start with the good stuff first. We'll start with the contracts. I think Mark wants to jump in and talk about a couple of guys with winning new contracts in the last few years.
I'm the type of kid, right, who plays Madden with the cap on. There's two types of people who play Madden with cap off and Madden with cap on. And I'm one of those who plays with cap on. I don't know what it is. It might be the fact that I work as a director in my professional life and I have a look at budgets all day and I know what pennies and pounds equals on bottom lines. But when it comes to players' contracts getting done, I just have a right wet dream about it. I don't know what it is. The average fan kind of looks at the amount and sees the years, but I love looking at how that's split down, what's in total guarantees, what's in incentives, and all that kind of stuff. So obviously the big news is the Josh Allen contract. You know what I mean? That's a big news. It makes him the second highest player in the NFL. He falls just under Patrick Mahomes. He's on a 6-year deal for $258 million. It averages out to about 43 million pound a season when all the incentives come on. The interesting thing about this deal is he gets 150 million pound up front in total guarantees. Now, why do I say that's interesting? Because it's actually 9 million more in guarantees than what Mahomes got. So obviously Mahomes got this 10-year deal, which was 450 million, 45 million pound a season, but it can be 50 million pound a season with incentives. This Josh Allen contract, to me, look, the Bills are obviously showing him. We saw a big jump from him last year. They're getting this done early. And I think it was a race to see who could get Lamar, Mayfield, and Allen done first. Because whoever's going to come in now is going to want more out of those. And I would argue that to date, even though Lamar was MVP for a year, Josh Allen's maybe the safest bet for where he's going to go. But I think it does come with some warning, though, because let's face it, it wasn't long ago like Wentz and Goff were getting deals. And I think the Eagles and the Rams at that point probably both thought were set for the next 5 years. But now both them players aren't on the rosters. And let's just say that Josh Allen had a really good season last year, but he's now the second highest paid player in the NFL. We have to know he can replicate that yet. You know what I mean? It's not as safe as the Mahomes deal, who went out and won a Super Bowl and was MVP and brilliant. Allen, for me, still has a little bit to prove on this. You know what I mean? Does anybody else have a point on that? I mean, this is just my view on Josh Allen. John, what do you think about Josh Allen? Do you think that he's as sure as a sure thing can be?
I don't think he can be. Based on his rookie year and based on last season, it's two completely different players. How do you know which one you're getting over the long term? You'd hope you're getting the guy that was, MVP level last year. And just because I like to bring this in on a podcast, got 35 first downs against the 49ers defense. But, you'd hope you're getting that guy. You would, obviously. Like, if you have, you sorted for, as you say, you sorted for a decade. I don't know, though. I think I'd want to see another year before I started committing big money to somebody like that. He feels a very boom or bust quarterback, and he was very much a boom QB last year. Can he follow that up? I think, probably yes, but I would definitely have some reticence about it, though. I'm not I wasn't a fan of his coming into the draft. He had a dodgy first year. His accuracy was awful. And then last season, he just seemed to find his groove. Now, is that permanent? Like you said, we've been there with Wentz. We've been there with Goff is arguably the comparison here. Goff suddenly had a great year after a horrible start and got paid serious money, and now he's in Detroit. So, the NFL world turns quickly. You got to be able to keep up your level of performance. I don't think I'd be putting the money up there right now for Josh Allen. I'd want another year out of him.
Just on that, though, let's remember there is an arms race. I think they're thinking we don't want to wait because there's going to be a spate of quarterbacks with this new TV deal coming in. You know what I mean? And I know that the Raiders are wanting to sign Derek Carr. This is a nightmare for the Las Vegas Raiders. You've got Derek Carr who's on $25 million this year and $20 million next year. And then he's gone. He's due to hit the negotiating table. He's looking at that money now and he's thinking, well, I'm not quite the playoff player that these lads are, and I might not have this. But hey, I've been in the league now for 7 years. I'm a trusted veteran. I want $35 million. In fact, no, I'm talking about $40 million. And if you're asking me, I wouldn't be signing Derek Carr for more than £30 million a season. Ryan Tannehill got a really good deal for the Titans, where he got just under £30 million a year. That's the kind of deal that the Raiders really want to be looking at Carr for. What I would do is I would give Carr a 5-year deal at $30 million a year and guarantee $100 million of it. So basically, theoretically, becomes a £25 million a year contract. Anything above that, I'd be walking away from the table with Derek Carr. But you've got Mayfield and you've got Lamar coming up as well. It's just going to be an arms race around, agents and who can get the table and who can use this now. Because I think in an ideal world, John, you're right. I think the Bills would have wanted to wait a year. But you wait a year, you get in the playoffs again because the team's marvellous. So he's got that to argue. Lamar Jackson signs a new deal by then. Baker Mayfield signs a new deal by then. And all of a sudden, this £42 million a year is now £45 million a year. You know what I mean? There's so much of a quarterback, because it's such a quarterback-driven league. We're going to have Kirk Cousins situations where you just resetting the market. For a team like the Raiders, who have got Derek Carr ready to hit the table, this is our worst nightmare. If Derek Carr comes and asks for more than $35 million, I'm cutting and running. I'll see you later, Derek Carr. But thanks, but no thanks. You're not a £35 million a year quarterback, I'm afraid.
I did look forward to us talking about this particular topic with Allen's extension, because it means I get to talk about Mr. Bean, the GM of the Buffalo Bills, who I think it was on Pat McAfee's show I was watching the other day, that he said he was talking about this particular restructure and how they did the deal, and Mark mentioned the 150 million bonus, guaranteed money, and how it was bigger than Mahomes. And I think Bean said something to the effect that he kind of had to do it because a lot of the guarantee can't be this year. They don't have the money for it. The cap's gone down. They've had to kick it back a year. So in exchange for kicking it back a year, he's dialed it up a little bit. And he said stuff to the effect of that, and that he very much wanted Josh Allen to know that he was their guy, and they're not going to bring in a veteran as a backup to him. Like they love this guy, clearly. The GM was all about him when he was being interviewed about it. I just thought it was interesting that they'd kicked it back a year because of the COVID stuff, and that he was so open about the fact that they'd kicked it back a year.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm happy they played Josh Allen. I like him. I'm not saying he's going to reach the peaks he did last year, but I still think he'll be close. I think he's a good quarterback, and he's got enough talent around to help him out with that. Before we get on to a few of the not so people who are getting a good contracts, someone who didn't look like he was going to get one, but then he has got one, and it's a very weird one, is Xavier Howard, the cornerback from Dolphins. He's looked like he might have been on the move. He was holding out, wanted to be paid, obviously, like most people do. But it turned out a lot of his incentives were like Pro Bowl and loads of different stuff that he has to reach this year to then he will become the highest paid cornerback this year. So there's a lot of I couldn't even list it all here. There's that many different bits of this contract that will make him, I think put him up to, it could potentially get him to 16.2 million or something like that with all these incentives. So, John, is this a contract reconstructure to keep him happy for this year? And things might happen in 2022 where we'll see him on the move.
NFL contracts, a lot of NFL contracts are like this. You see it every year going into free agency. He's signed the highest pay, he's signed the highest deal for any player at this position, and then 3 years later he's down the line, he's cut because actually it turns out 50% of it is a roster bonus. And I think it probably is. What I found interesting with Howard was that he'd obviously signed a deal that he wasn't happy with structure-wise, but he'd actually signed for quite a few years. Who's advising these guys to sign these deals? Like, players, he's not the first player that complained having signed a long-term deal and then gone, hang on, I'm not getting the money I thought I was here. How are teams doing this? They're kind of pulling the wool over the players' eyes. I find it quite interesting what they've been able to do. I think it made sense for the Dolphins as well. They're in a position where they could be a playoff team if Tua has a good year. They need all the help they could get. He was pretty good on defense for them last year. I think it made sense, but I do think it's very much unless you absolutely are a top 5 corner in the NFL, you're not going to be there, or you're going to be taking another restructure, but in the opposite direction in 12 months' time.
Yeah, I think. Go for it. Have you got something, Mark?
I just want to say, I think this had to be done for the Dolphins. That system that they play, man cover corners are rare. Xavier Howard's an interception machine. I think he got 10 last year or something absolutely balmy. I think it was 10 interceptions the kid got last year. He's a magnet. And he's a man cover corner, which is that system needs it. That system depends on people who can play on an island and be man cover. So I think they just had to get the deal done. And to be honest with you, he's the best player on that Dolphins defense. I don't think they ever wanted to lose him. And like you said, it's a really strange contract. A lot of it's in Pro Bowl incentives. But it does mean he can be the highest paid corner in the NFL if he hits all of his incentives, which I think is what he wanted. Because, if I was listing 3 or 4 cornerbacks in the NFL who are the best cornerbacks in the NFL, Xavier, he's going to be on it. Xavier Howard's going to be on that list of top 3 or 4 cornerbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, so obviously there's a couple of guys who've got the contracts in different ways. Obviously, there's a few outs in training camp, and obviously there's a couple of guys at my team, and I'll get onto them in a bit. But one person that's not really holding out is injured at the moment, but he's had a few cryptic, I think, Instagram or Twitter or tweets stuff like that. And obviously some reports have come out is Michael Thomas of the Saints. So I know Mac wants to dig his teeth on, so I'll let Mac go.
This is a nightmare for the Saints. You'll all remember at the start of the season, the Saints were in cap hell. And one of the things that they've done is they took these big contracts of players and kicked it into guarantees, shrinking the base salary for the year. Now, this has got to be a massive nightmare for the Saints. I don't think they envisage this. I think its bridges are broken and they're going to have to explore a trade from CJ Henderson in Florida with the Jags. You know, they need a corner. You know, let's take your second year cornerback, who was a first round draft pick, who's no longer happy there. We'll give you Michael Thomas. That seems like there could be a deal that could be made there because they're desperate for corners in the Saints. But this is ugly for the Saints. It's great for whichever team acquire him because his cap hit this year is £1 million. His cap hit next year is £15 million. And his cap hit the year after is £15 million. Which for Michael Thomas, you know, who when he's fit and when he's playing is one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, that's a fantastic deal if you're trading for him. However, the dead cap that the Saints has to eat is astronomical. I'll give you some of the figures. This year, it would be £32 million in dead cap. Next year, it would be £22.7 million in dead cap. The year after, it would be £13.8 million in dead cap. And it's not until 2024 that the money that they owe him runs out. Now, it's guaranteed money, so it's getting paid. The truth is they're going to be paying Michael Thomas long after he leaves their franchise, and they'll still be paying him $5 million in 2024 in dead cap money. You know, like it's such a nightmare. You know, like when we were all thinking, wow, the Saints are magical, and look how they've made the cap disappear. You know what I mean? And at the start of the season, this is the repercussions of it. The cap is real, folks. You know.
Yeah, so go on, JP, quick point. Go on. I saw you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, what you just made about the elastic salary cap that the Saints have been doing. We also had the Taysom Hill deal. This is the realities of the NFL. It catches up with you eventually. This is, you get one disgruntled player on this contract, it could screw them for the next 4 years. It's quite funny as somebody who doesn't particularly care for the Saints. It's quite funny, but yeah, it's not a nice position for them to be in.
I think it's funny that you say salary caps because a couple of Seattle players are holding out at the moment and obviously looking for new contracts with our QB1 taking a lot of the money. So he's offered to restructure his contract to get these two guys in. Just quickly on Jamal Adams, I'll come to you guys after if you want to throw in. But Jamal Adams, just a quick one for me. When you trade in so much capital for this guy, I just can't believe you ain't got this contract done already. You knew what you were going to do. You knew what you were getting in for with this and stuff. I just can't believe it's not been done yet. It's a strange one for me. Dwayne Brown is a bigger concern for me, to be honest with you. He's our main offensive lineman, the left tackle, the guy who protects Russell Wilson's line side. And if they can't get this one done, it is a concern. I don't know if I don't know where it's come from, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's to do with Trent Williams. You know, he's a older offensive lineman, you know, getting a big contract in the year, and him, Dwayne Brown, maybe thinking, you know what, I want a piece of that pie. I want some of that money. But to be honest with you, the Dwayne Brown one looks so far away when on the reports that you hear. It is a real concern. What do you think about these two, Mark?
Well, you know, they're not the only two. I've heard that Watt in the Pittsburgh Steelers is holding out at the moment. Minka Fitzpatrick wants a new deal as well. The difference is, though, is with the CBA, these players are in training camp because if they weren't, they'd be getting fined $50,000 a day. So I don't know if it can be classed as a holdout anymore. So what I understand is happening is whilst they're holding out, it's now called holding in, is what the media buzz is for it. But what they do is they take part in individual drills, but they just refuse to take part in team drills. So they do all the individual stuff that they've got to do, but the second you've got to do team stuff, they're like, no, we're just going to sit on the sidelines and not do it. But this is, like you said, I think the Adams one will ultimately get done, Jordan, because put so much money into it. They kind of back themselves into a corner. That has to get done. Otherwise, they're going to look really foolish. The Dwayne Brown one, I think you're hitting the nail bang on the head. I think this is as a result of other offensive tackles getting paid in free agency, particularly Trent Williams, who got extended before free agency. I think he looks at that and goes, I've been a good left tackle for the majority of my career, if not all of it. And I'm still playing at a very high level. I want to get paid. I want one more paycheck before I go. Yeah, but Watt's the same. Watt needs a new contract in Pittsburgh. He's holding out or holding in, as we should say. And Minka Fitzpatrick as well. I think that a lot of these teams will get these deals done. I think when you've got multiple players at one franchise who are holding out or holding in, however we're going to phrase it, I think they've probably got to deal with the agents where they're going, look, we need to sign this guy first. So in the case of Seattle, they're probably talking to Brown's agent saying, we need to get Adams done first, but I promise you, your guy's going to get done straight away after it. And likewise in Pittsburgh, they're probably saying to Minka's agent, you're going to be the very next person we see the second we get this Watt deal done. You know what I mean? So there is multiple players at these two franchises who are disgruntled, but ultimately I think that the deals will get done for them.
I really hope you're right on our side, especially with the Brown one. So that's the contract disputes and hold-ins, as Mark has told us now, out of the way. I think it'd be wrong of us if we didn't mention the vaccination issues along with the coaches and the players. And just before I get on to your guys' opinions on it all, just a couple of like snippets of what people have said. I know Lamar Jackson came out and he came out and these are his words. I just got off the COVID list, so I've got to talk to my team about this and see how I feel about it. I'm just going to keep grinding as much as I can and go from there. You know, and then obviously I'm not even going to speak about the big Cole Beasley one. I'll be here all night if I put his memoir out about it. But just the two coaches, Mike Zimmer. You could see where these guys are coming from, these coaches. As Mike Zimmer said, I'm disappointed that this has happened. I'm frustrated, not just with my football players who didn't get vaccinated, but I'm frustrated with everybody who didn't. And Rivera, we all know his health problems in the past. He's come out and said, I'm beyond frustrated with this team's low vaccination rate as training camp begins. And obviously citing his own health history as one of his concerns. I know this is a topic that you wanted to bring up, JP, so I'll let you roll the ball with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, leaving aside my own opinion on anti-vaxxers, because I don't want us to get thrown off YouTube. From a sporting point of view, I just don't get it. Like, the NFL has put in protocols which basically make it near enough impossible for an unvaccinated player to basically exist within the team sphere. And you've got top players, starting quarterbacks in the NFL. That is not an easy job to get in the NFL. There's only 32 of those jobs, you know. And you have guys like Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is lucky to be on a roster for the way he's been playing. He's not been a good quarterback now for a good couple of years, and he's putting himself at risk in this scenario by saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated. I'm going to walk around in plexiglass or whatever the hell he was coming out with the other week. You can see a video that Gaz made on our socials if you want to see how that might look in real life. But yeah, I just don't get it. I think it's beyond selfish, and for athletes who are supposed to have the best advisors in the world and all this kind of thing, to be doing this, and it's not just that. It's the side of the thing where you're putting your coach at risk. You talked about Rivera. The guy's a cancer survivor. He's about as immunocompromised as you can get, and basically his team are leaving him open to potentially getting it and being quite seriously ill. I get where it's come from, because there's a huge anti-vax movement, and everybody spends too much time on social media and YouTube these days and will believe anything they read. But Jesus, what a mess. Honestly, what a mess. I mean, I could see it maybe impacting a few people's jobs in the league. Cole Beasley for definite, because he's hanging on to his roster spot as it is. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe. That's fine, but Jesus, you really are risking your job in that scenario, and I just can't understand why you would do that for the sake of getting 2 injections in you. It just seems bizarre to me. I don't know. I think Mark's got a question for me, so I'll let him go.
I have got a question for you, John. I mean, I've got very little to say on this. One, I'm not a doctor, and two, I'm not a scientist. You know what I mean? So I don't know all around it. I know that when the jabs got offered to me, I took them. And I still caught COVID, by the way. You know, I took 2 jabs and I still got COVID. You know, so look, the players are the players. They're going to make their own decisions. I understand that. What the question I want to ask you, though, John, is we've just been talking about QBs getting new contracts. You know, we've just seen Josh Allen sign a new deal, and Lamar's going to be quickly behind him. Do you think that this is a bargaining chip that the Baltimore have got here that can kind of go, you know, you can forget about this new contract for a year, Lamar, because it doesn't look like you're a team player, because you're right. The laws that the NFL have put in makes it almost impossible for they've got to eat lunch by themselves. They've got to do team. They're sending them to Coventry. If you either get a jab or you go into the NFL version of Coventry. I mean, this has got to be a warning bell or something where maybe the Baltimore Ravens are reluctant to go to a table with Lamar this quick. Would you be if you were the GM?
Yeah, honestly, I think I probably would. I think the NFL's version of Coventry is probably Houston, so maybe they'll trade him there. I don't know, but I do find it is tough because it's not just the impact on the player themselves; it's the impact on the team around them. It can cause a division in the locker room. If there's enough, like you look at Washington with their vaccination rate, for instance, there's going to be a real divide in that locker room. Does that impact how they show up on the field? Does it impact practices? Does, you know, and with somebody like Lamar, yeah, you probably are thinking, well, you know, we want to give this extension to a guy that's all about the team, that's all about success. Whether you subscribe to the anti-vaccination stuff or not, this is not that. So I think it's going to give them some pause, and they're smart enough in Baltimore that they will know that. You know, they will be thinking that. I don't think there's any way they couldn't be, really. If you are a starting quarterback of an NFL franchise, there are 32 starting quarterback jobs. That is not very many. And to be honest, some of those 32 ain't great quarterbacks. But you are in a privileged position, and to me, you have to be leading from the front, regardless of what you might believe. If the NFL is making it almost impossible for you to be unvaccinated, I think you've kind of just got to swallow your pride and get on with it. And for a guy at Lamar Jackson's level to be, you know, to be saying those weasel words that everybody seems to do now, where they say like, "Oh, I'm working through it, I'm researching, I'm doing this, that, and the other." It's just it's bizarre to me. It's not what a leader of a team does. It really isn't. I would be definitely considering things if I was Baltimore. I
think that's enough on the vaccination. And seeing as though John has just compared Coventry to Houston Texans, I think if we might as well move on to Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. You know, we all know what's been going on over the last months or so. I think I can't remember how many months it's been going on. It feels that long. But obviously, Watson's come back to training camp. He's been held out of team drills. I think today something came out where I haven't actually seen it myself. I've just heard that the depth chart's come out and he's number 4 on the depth chart. So that's another bit of news to put within this story that is becoming, as Mark Words would say, an absolute bin fire. So, Bones, start where you want. Go pick where you want to start from. So it could be from any angle.
So its total number of accusations now is up to 24 different accusations, and we touched on it the other week how the league has a short memory with these things, but we have seen that Goodell is the commissioner that will hand out some suspensions. It may not be massive suspensions, but he will hand out suspensions. Well, Roethlisberger got 6 games. It ended up being 4. Zeke got 6 games. Like he has handed out suspensions in the past. I think no matter what happens here with these investigations, I'll be surprised if we see Watson play anywhere this year. And I think if the Texans end up having to trade him because he doesn't want to stay there, I think they're going to end up taking a hit on the fact that he's not probably going to play a single snap of football this year. I just don't see it. I don't see how, with 24 different accusations against it, he plays a single snap this year.
Yeah. On this point, we were talking about this off air last week. You know what I mean? The NFL during off season are desperate for any level of news, and I think it's a bit unlucky for Deshaun Watson that this happened when there's a dead air in football. And of course, rightly so, it's all over Twitter. Media's going mental. Look, I'm not trying to downplay things for the females at risk, But on the scale of things, this doesn't even scratch the surface of what NFL players have done and gotten away with and still went on to have Hall of Fame careers. I'm going to give you my top 5, okay, of NFL players who have done worse things than Deshaun Watson and went on to be Pro Bowl players. Some of them were actually in the Hall of Fame. So we've got Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor, this is for you, Tom. Lawrence Taylor, all-pro defensive end, outside linebacker, pass rusher, Hall of Fame. Lawrence Taylor, when he was a footballer, was caught with a 16-year-old prostitute in his hotel room. Yeah, he was caught having sex with a 16-year-old prostitute. He's in the Hall of Fame. So Lawrence Taylor's number 5. Adam Pac-Man Jones. Adam Pac-Man Jones was so fond of strippers. He used to beat them up. He used to go to strip clubs and then beat them up afterwards, including the bouncers as well. At one of these bar fights, if you want to call it, a gun was fired and accidentally severed some poor geezer's spine, and he's in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Adam Pac-Man Jones left the Cowboys and went on to Cincinnati, played in many Pro Bowls, went on to play, for another 8 or 9 years after this incident. Jim Brown, famous Hall of Fame running back, played for the Cleveland Browns. Beating one wife wasn't enough for Jim Brown. Jim Brown beat 2 of them. He had 2 wives and beat them both. O.J. Simpson, another one. Well done for bringing that one up. He actually wasn't on my list. But let's face it, he only got off because of a tight glove when all fingers were pointing at he'd killed his ex-lover, that partner. You know, John's laughing at because he knows that we're probably going to get sued as a result for this, Okay, where am I up to now? Michael Vick went to prison for fighting dogs, came back. There was a whole host of teams that wanted to sign him. He ended up in Philadelphia, again, went to a Pro Bowl. And then finally, Ray Rice, the famous middle linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. Ray Rice was charged twice with murder. Got up for it, mind you. There was a witness that turned up mysteriously, probably with a bag of cash. You know what I mean? But Ray Rice went on to have a Hall of Fame career, won a Super Bowl or 2. So on the grand scale of things, Deshaun Watson, let's face it, it's probably had a massage, got a hard-on halfway through it, lifted the towel up and went, yeah, pet, do you fancy rubbing that for us? You know what I mean? On the scale of what we've just seen from the players that we've listed, albeit it's a terrible thing, in the NFL world, this doesn't even scratch the surface of what players can get away with. I can guarantee you there will be a market for Deshaun Watson. He will find a club. He will go on to have a brilliant career. And they'll probably make a hero of him when he's in the playoffs one week by saying, Deshaun Watson, he's had an amazing season. That adversity he had to overcome after being found out for these misdemeanors. Because that's the way the American press is. From hero to zero, from zero back to hero again. Somebody will sign him. Somebody will make him a player. I don't know what Houston are doing because they're paying him. They might as well play him. I think they're waiting for the NFL and Goodell to make some kind of deal and, ban him for the year so that all goes away. But ultimately, I think he's probably going to get a 4-game suspension, which is the same as what Ben Roethlisberger did when he was charged with rape and he made that disappear. He's probably going to miss 4 games or 6 games like Zeke Elliott did. But somebody will take this guy. They'll say they want 3 first, so they're not going to get that. But they might as well say that that's what they want because that's the maximum you can get. I wouldn't be surprised if they get a first this year for it. They get a second, which could be a conditional first moving forward. I think 2 firsts will ultimately be the price for Deshaun Watson and maybe a 4th or 5th round pick on top of that. I would take him. Hey, we've got the massages in Las Vegas as well. None of them have blown the whistle. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That should be an advertise. We should get on the phone to Deshaun Watson's agent because we're in a tricky contract situation with Carr now. You know what I mean? I would have him. I would take him at the Raiders. I would pay that money for him, no problem. I'd probably toss in Carr as well. Not that Carr's a bad quarterback. I just wouldn't pay him the money that he's going to want.
I do still think there's I think you're right. I think you're banging that nail on the head there, really, with he will still go on to have a full-fledged career. He'll probably enter the Hall of Fame if he lives up to all his potential and all that stuff. But I think you're right. I think at least a 6-game suspension like Zeke, because Zeke didn't even have charges filed against him. Like, I know it's not the same the same caliber of crime, but it's 24 of a smaller crime with charges actually filed. I think we might not see him play much this year, if at all.
Could somebody do me a favour and set up a crowdfunder so I can afford a lawyer for all the lawsuits, which are probably going to come my way in the next week from these very, very wealthy, very, very big NFL players who I've just reminded of all their misdemeanors in the public world of YouTube. Someone please either protect me, hide me, or fund me for a lawyer, like instantly.
I mean, Jesus, are we still on? I mean, I don't even know. Like, it's good to be here at the last episode of Third and Short Overtime, anyway. But if you've never bought our merch before, now might be a good time because I think we might need the money next week. No, I have to concur, perhaps in less strong language, but I have to concur. Like, it's easy to rehabilitate yourself as an NFL player. You just got to win some games. There's very few people that have been drummed out of the league, never to return. Strangely, it seems gambling is more of an offence to the NFL than some things are. So,
or kneeling against black oppression. The only player that's ever come back is one who's took a silent protest against black oppression in Colin Kaepernick. You know what I mean?
I don't think I'm going to be able to top anything there, to be honest with you, lads. So I'm just going to move on with the image of a Texan woman using the word pet. No, I don't think that's in their lingo. But anyway, let's move on to other stuff. I think we touched on this earlier with the Sam Ehlinger, talk a little bit. Obviously, the injuries in Indianapolis to Carson Wentz. I forgot his name there. That's how relevant it is. Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson both going down with a foot injury. They are actually back in training now, so I don't know what they're doing. I know they're jogging around and stuff, so I don't actually know when the timescale is back. But a few days ago, I would have said unlikely week 1, but who knows now? So I know, Mark, you touched on Sam Ehlinger earlier and stuff. So what do you make of it? And obviously the new contracts in for the coaches.
I think it's got to be a concern for them. Because what do they do with Carson Wentz? They're not going to bring back Nick Folk and have that whole nightmare Nick Folk, Carson Wentz scenario. I think ultimately what they'll do is they'll hand the ball off to Justin Taylor and Marlon Mack 30 times a game, and they'll just try to run behind that line. The problem is, though, is Quentin Nelson, their all-pro left guard, is also injured. And they already had a big question mark at left tackle. So, I don't know what the offensive line all of a sudden looks a little bit weaker now because they've got a revolving door at left tackle after Anthony Constanzo retired. They've got Quentin Nelson, who's just brilliant, the best guard in the NFL, but also suffering from this foot injury. So whilst it's easy to say, well, look, they'll probably run the ball 30 times a game. And they're fortunate they do have a good defense. Darius Leonard signed a new contract as well. So I mean, look, this is a team that's very well balanced. I think ultimately they'll think their way around it. But yeah, I mean, you can't be concerned about it though.
I think the injury situation of the Colts is concerning for Colts fans in a way, but they've had a stroke of good news this week. Wentz is at training camp without a boot on his foot, walking around with a mild limp at worst. The story is the recovery time for whatever the problem was is 5 to 12 weeks, and it currently looks like he might make the 5-week mark, which will put him back in the league for week 1 of the regular season, week 2 of the regular season at worst at this rate, assuming all the healing goes well. So they might not be too worried about quarterback right now. It looks like they might have Wentz back just in time.
Well, I hope they're both out because we've got them week 1, so that'd be nice. So we have had football from last week. I think it were in about a few hours this time last week, I believe it was. I think it was Thursday, Friday night. Obviously, there's more preseason games coming forward now, but we had the Hall of Fame game between the Steelers and the Cowboys. I'm going to be honest with you, lads. I got to half time. I turned it off. It just, for me, it just wasn't good. But what I did see, I saw some Micah Parsons, which was brilliant to watch. I know Mark's a big fan of Micah Parsons. What did you think of him, even though it is a preseason game?
Come as Bill, didn't he? Really, he was all over the ball. He had a turnover. I was watching Hard Knocks this week, and he was just bitching about having to come off the field. You know, like you just wanted to play the whole game. But obviously, rightly so, they protected him. But yeah, he came as Bill. I said he was the best defensive player in the class. It was between him and Surtain. And yeah, he was all around the ball. He was sideline to sideline. He's going to make that second level of the Dallas Cowboys defense, you know, alongside Van Der Esch and alongside Smith. Very fearsome, very, very fearsome. Do you know what I was interested in, Jordan? They didn't make him rush the passer that much. You know, when he came out of college, I really thought he was an excellent pass rusher. And I thought, I wonder if he's going to play a bit of Leo in that system. But no, they banged him right in at middle linebacker. They had, you know, like I'm presuming they're going to be looking to play him at middle linebacker. And they're going to be looking to rotate the other two at Sam. They will play a Leo system. Well, the Leo and the Gus Bradley, in the Dan Quinn system, which is the same as the Gus Bradley system, which you'll know coming out of Seattle. The Leo plays as an overhanging pass rusher, as a wide edge rusher. So where this leaves Jalen Smith, I'm not too sure. I imagine good players make the field. They'll find packages which get all three on the field at one time, I imagine. But yeah, I was surprised that he was playing Mike. I'm surprised he was playing middle linebacker more often than not.
Yeah, I must admit, I was surprised where they placed him. I don't know what they'll do going forward with the preseason games, if he'll stick there or they're moving about. But I think wherever they put him, I think he's going to be a beast of a player. John, anyone stick out for you in the Hall of Fame game last week?
I think Parsons was the main takeaway, as everybody's already said. I think it was a tough watch. There was a lot of miscues in that game. I was more generally watching the Steelers' offense because obviously no offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's spelt like the country, so I'll pronounce it like that. He's got a pretty decent track record as a coordinator, but it made the Steelers' offense look very different to sort of what we've known it as historically, and they didn't quite look ready for it. We were talking last week, I think it was on air, it may have been off there, about the Dwayne Haskins and Rudolph sort of battle in Pittsburgh to be the backup. I don't think either one really separated themselves. Rudolph was kind of what he's always been, and Haskins still looks like he's never seen a football field before. So he's going to have to improve quite rapidly. He's not got many games to do it now either, but there have only been 3 preseason games. I don't know. I think it was good to have football back. It was good to have fans back. It was good to see touchdowns scored again. Chase Claypool got himself injured again, which is a surprise to nobody, although he seems to be all right as far as I can tell. Yeah, it was. There was some good stuff in there. If you're Cowboys fan, you're happy with what you've seen from your draft class, I would have thought. And Steelers, maybe a little bit of growing pains with the offense, but that's what this time of year is for, really.
Speaking of the Steelers' offense, you mentioned the Claypool catch, which it was a great catch. Apparently, he only winded himself, and it wasn't actually that bad. But they took him off because they're like, let's just not risk it. But apparently, he landed on the ball funny and winded himself quite badly, and that's how the story goes. But it was a catch, wasn't it? It was a catch. Najee Harris, I thought. I mean, he didn't have any big 70+ yard runs, but you saw sparks of what he was going to be. He still managed to run through a dude. He didn't have the best offensive line out there in front of him not tonight, but that night, and still managed to do some stuff. So yeah, I thought that was quite good to watch. I don't know. I think it wasn't the best game in the world to watch. Preseason is not amazing, but it is one of those times of year that I like to watch just to see, all those guys we talked about in the latter half of people's drafts, all those 6th, 7th round picks, all those 5th round picks. This is your time of year to have a watch of your team and see if any of those, those later round picks are going to make a spark and be on your team. And it's, this is when you're going to see them do what they can do. And I just think it's an interesting time of year. We've talked about all these different picks. Yeah. I think it's this you should be watching, even if it's not the best football in the world.
Right, so we're coming to the end of the the episode now. I think we should finish with going around each guy, and one thing that we haven't touched on coming out of training camp stories. I'll come to you first, Mark. I'm not sure. I think I might know what it is. I'm not 100%, but we'll go with you first, Mark.
Well, I'm going to go with the reincarnation of Brian Edwards, who's now being compared to Terrell Owens, if you speak to John Gruden, or Devon Adams, if you speak to Derek Carr. You know, some players, and John Gruden in particular, doesn't do young players very many favours, does he? Like, you know? Here we go. Here's Brian Edwards, a guy who caught about 5 balls last year, albeit he does look a good player, and I liked him coming out of South Carolina. He's a proper X. He's strong at the catch point, but John Gruden's labelled him Terrell Owens. You know, I don't want to burst any Raiders balloons. I know I've got a few who are friends. I'm a Raiders fan myself, but let's be realistic. This kid was a 3rd-round pick for a reason, probably mostly because he was injured a lot in college. Terrell Owens or Adams, I wouldn't see is yet, although I do believe the buzz that Ruggs is getting. I think that we're going to see a better version of Ruggs this year. He's put on 15 pounds, which he needed to because he couldn't get off press last year for loving the money. Apparently this year, him and Derek Carr have been putting in the hours, and it's starting to show on the training ground field. So yeah, the Raiders, there's a bit buzz coming out the Raiders around 2 second-year wide receivers. Another thing I do want to just touch on when it comes to the Raiders, just as I'm there now already, Waller's missed 8 days of practice. That's a concern because Waller's the best player at our franchise. I'd be worried if that stretches much further. And Damon Arnett, oh God, everyone knows I love Damon Arnett. Damon Arnett is no longer playing with the 1st string. Damon Arnett is now playing with the 2nd string and all being beaten out by a 31, 32-year-old Haywood. You know, we spent a top 20 pick on that boy last year. You know, everybody knows my thoughts about it at the time. He wasn't particularly fast, ran a 4.56, which is more tight end speed than wide receiver corner speed. He's got T-Rex arms. He's got very, very short arms. And I don't really particularly think he's a scheme fit for what Gus Bradley will want to do. It looks like a terrible pick a year later. I don't want to write off a football careers early, but I'd be quite happy at this point to see the back of Damon Arnett. And if anybody wants to give us anything, I'll be open to taking it. I've noticed that CJ Henderson's available for the Jags, so I'm not going to touch on that point. But if there's a deal I can do there, I'll be willing to do it.
Well, there you go. NFL, stay on alert. Mark's your middle guy if you want to hash out a deal for anyone at the Raiders. John, is there anything that one final thought?
Yeah, there's a couple of things really, but I'll throw this one out there just to add to the Raiders' problems. Derek Carr. I always said, is it Derek Carr? I always say Derek. Yeah, it's Derek Carr, isn't it? I always get them mixed up for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, Derek Carr has said he feels he could play another 15 years. So his and Gruden's contract should be ended about the same time, if that's the case. I don't know what you reckon to that, Mark, but yeah, I was a bit surprised by that one because I think that would have him playing at like 45, which seems a bit odd. I could talk more 49ers camp, but the only thing anybody cares about the 49ers is Trey Lance, which, to be fair, is kind of where I am with it as well. I would care about Nick Bosa, but since he doesn't want to get vaccinated and his girlfriend's a racist, he's falling out of my good graces at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to get us cancelled tonight. I apologise.
As if you're going to get us cancelled after my rant earlier on.
Bones, final thought?
Well, I mean, it's been an interesting evening. We're trying to get cancelled a lot. Yeah, I've been enjoying training camp. I've been enjoying watching the Lions training camp and seeing the battles between like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jeff Okudah. But the point we didn't touch on too much, Mark's mentioned it a couple of times with CJ Henderson this week. Really weird thing with CJ Henderson with this whole the Jags he's on the trade block. This guy was a 1st-round pick and a high 1st-round pick at that. Literally
Top 10, he was taking 9th, Bones. Taking 9th.
We never see this happen. 1st round, ninth pick overall. and he's apparently on the trade block. But then this week we also heard from Charlie Strong, I think Jags' assistant coach, is he saying, and I've got it written down so I could quote him, he can make us a lot better football team. We're a month still out from playing our first game, and then we have the preseason games, and they will be good to get him back out so we can get out there and run around. So I don't know if the Jags are just blustering so that they can get more trade capital out of him. The guy had 2 different injuries last year, one that required surgery and was on the COVID list at the start of training camp. But it's just unprecedented to see a first-round pick that's barely been in the EuroLeague, the league a year, go on the block.
I've got a tenuous link here. Urban Meyer, Ohio State. We've got Damon Arnett. Give us C.J. Henderson. We'll give you your Ohio State corner, Damon Arnett. And we'll probably have to give you something else, like a second or maybe a third or something like that. Maybe they want a first. We'll give you Damon Arnett. You know this guy. We'll give you him. You give us C.J. Henderson. I don't think it'll ever happen because ultimately, why would the Jags do that deal? But in an ideal world, I'll be on my prayer mat later on the night, and that's what I'll be asking the gods for,
I think in an ideal world, Mark will be having all the Panthers players over on the Raiders if we're being serious. I'm just going to throw something in real quick before we go. We're getting on with time. Obviously, it's my team, Seattle. The guy who's been really impressed is Colby Parkinson, tight end. He missed a lot of his rookie year last year with an injury. He was undrafted. You know how much we love undrafted in Seattle. But he's really, really doing well in training camp. So he's one to watch out for. And Shane Waldron loves his tight ends. So that's just a little bit from me. I'm going to be honest with you, lads. I've enjoyed this episode. Training camp has been brilliant watching it. We're getting close to the season. And I think we've got a few more weeks before we really get a kick-off, and we've got some good episodes coming. I think next week we're probably going to touch on coaches on the hot seat, but we won't give too much away this week. We'll see. I think we're going to go for Thursday now. I think that's going to be our thing, unless things change, and they normally do. But thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.